Talking about Room, how did that job come to you, or did you know about that job, or how did you come to be a part of that movie?
Well, there was a couple steps to it. So the book was sent to me maybe a year before I got the script by my manager, just as a good read, and was kind of told with the pretense that you can't option it, it's already been optioned, and someone famous will probably play this character, so don't envision yourself in it at all. So I didn't. And then when I found out it was being made into a film, like I said, like a year later, I still just didn't think that it was a possibility for me to get. I thought it was out of reach. And then when I read the script and it was incredible, I knew I definitely wasn't gonna get it.
So then what happened in order for you to do it?
Well, I had a meeting with the director, Lenny Abrahamson, and it was supposed to just be like a 30-minute sort of shake our hands, say hello coffee, turned into a 4-hour long thing where we both really had the same idea and vision for the movie. And then he had like 3 girls come in and audition, which I was very excited about because then I felt like I might actually have a shot, because I certainly wasn't gonna get it because I had like fame or international appeal or anything like that. It was just only gonna come from if I did a really good job at the audition. And I guess I did.
Do you feel like it's better for you in the long run, like say in your first week of a job, or the first couple of weeks of shooting, if you've actually gone through an audition process?
Totally.
Because my concern is if a director doesn't know
what you're doing,
that you're turning up day one and you're going to sort of basically bring a character out in front of like a big money machine. You know, money's already turning and the crew's all there, and this fear that they're going to come up to you and go, oh, you're going to do it like that.
Why did you make that?
So do you feel better coming on set knowing that you've actually won that job?
I do. I mean, maybe with more experience, perhaps I'll feel more comfortable just like coming in and doing it. But I felt like I couldn't have done Room without auditioning because I needed to know that it was in me.
Yeah.
And I also cared so much about it that I did feel this sense that what was more important was that the story was told correctly by the right person, not that it was me. It didn't need to be me. Yeah. I'd be happy to do it if I was the right person to do it. And I surprised myself in the audition by going, oh, I think I have a spark of something that I could bring to this. I just want him to connect with something.
Joy, he's really doing fine.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm supposed to be happy.
You just need to rest, okay?
No, I don't. I don't need to rest.
That's what the doctor
That is not what the doctor said. You don't know what he said because it was a confidential conversation and you don't know what he said.
All right. I feel like you're impossible to talk to right now.
Oh, sorry.
Well, no, you're not sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sorry.
This actually brings me to my question to you, which is, because I was working with pretty much nothing from the book. I had no reference points. I had to completely create someone from the ground up. You had much more factual information available to you. Did that make it easier to do, or is that harder?
I think playing John Connolly in Black Mass was the first, or one of the first times that I played a real character who was still alive and very much part of recent history. From memory, I'm probably going to completely be lying in a second, but someone that we had access to, someone that...
Yeah, was he available to you to speak with?
Well, not so much access, like
personal.
I could go visit him. He's in federal prison.
Yeah, you could get phone calls.
Well, the real problem with that was that the book that the journalists had written, the actual book, Black Mass, that the film is based on, is the account of a period of 2 decades, I guess. And John Connolly's recollection of those events is very different from the events that the movie depicts. So if I went to visit him in prison, I'd be saying to him, look, I'm here to research you, but everything you say is false, I'm saying is true.
Interesting.
Or I'm part of a group of people who are making a story that's saying that you're a criminal, and he would say, well, no, I was sanctioned to do those things. So there's a bit of a problem, I think, with going to research somebody under that sort of deceptive pretense. Or if I was open about it, then I'm going to visit a guy in orange overalls and say, hey, let me milk everything I can from you, and you stay here in prison, and I'm going to go and, you know,
Go on my movie set.
Go on my movie set, yeah. So, but I had access to him, footage of him on daytime interviews, where he was very vocal and vigilant about his position in the FBI and his right to do the things that he did. I had footage of him in court, and I had access to other FBI agents that knew him. But I mean, I guess what was interesting is the more information you have at your fingertips, there's sort of a pros and cons list. Like, there's benefits to it for sure, because you have information that allows you to kind of sharpen the end of the spear, I guess, get closer to the point of what you're trying to achieve. And if it serves the movie, to depict that person the way that person may have been, how they walked and how they talked and all that stuff that we love to find as actors. But the cons list is maybe that you become too obsessed with that stuff and you start to feel the pressure of getting that stuff right, and maybe to the detriment of the actual story.
Yeah, and then you just become like a cartoon instead of...
Yeah, and maybe you start to fear that you become too obsessed about the detail of creating a character that might start to be too much of a departure from the movie. Thankfully, Scott Cooper was trying to achieve great accuracy and in that stuff. And funnily enough, I've just been through that process again of playing someone who's,
Oh yeah, that's
you know,
what
like from
you just finished
the
that?
50s and 60s, and so I love having access to the footage because it just sort of narrows the field of research as well.
You're dressing differently. You're walking differently. You're getting manicures.
I'm walking differently.
Yeah, I think you are. Your head and your shoulders, the way you carry yourself, you're changing, John.
I might be getting older, but I'm not changing.
It's Jimmy Bulger that's changing you.
Ah, here we go.
Ever since you locked arms with that guy, you've changed. I can see it like the nose on my face. He's bad news, John.
It's not bad news. He is an informant. It's my job. You know this. I've told you this. I've known him since forever.
And you certainly hold your boyhood heroes in high regard. Jimmy this, Jimmy that.
He was very good to me when I was little, Marion. That's all you need to know.
How was he good to you, John? Did he take you trick-or-treating?
I know. It's kid stuff. To you, maybe. Yeah, I'm gonna go for a drive. Like it or not, Marianne, you married a street kid. And the streets taught me that you give and you get loyalty from your friends. And loyalty means a lot to me.
How did you get involved in Black Mass? What was that process like?
Black Mass was one of those sort of, I guess, a real gift that came to me. Scott Cooper and I had had a conversation in the past just generally about working together, and I'd seen Out of the Furnace and Crazy Heart. And what I admired about Scott was his ability to get actors who we already know are good and sort of show a different dimension to those people, or at least elicit really great performances out of people. And so out of the blue, I guess, Black Mass came about. I had been involved potentially in the movie before when it was first being talked about. Anyway, when Scott came on board to direct the movie, I was sort of worried that it, you know, because, you know, it's like movies sometimes are a game of musical chairs, and the game's just so and arranged just so, and then something falls apart, and then it comes together later on, and you worry that you won't be part of that game anymore.
Yeah.
But thankfully I was, and it was a great opportunity. You know, it was very attractive to me because it felt like a more complicated character than the usual, and it was very deceptive in that sense as well, because, you know, we're trying to create a character who wasn't necessarily a bad person, but also wasn't necessarily a good person. And that, to me, is sort of terrain that I really like and am very interested in general, because I believe that's where most people operate in life.
There's certain levels of consciousness that as we get older, we're allowed to see more of the world. We start off with this small view with very few, like, if you ever hear a parent talk to their kid and they're constantly like, why are we doing this? Why do you do this?
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's like, there's so many,
time.
Exactly, there's just too much to try and explain.
Don't
If
pee in
someone
the
say
garden.
like, well, what's what's democracy? You're just like, you know what? It's just a thing that people do, and it just goes this way. You put it down into like the simplest terms. But it's too complicated. It's just way too complicated for a kid to understand. And I think, especially with Room in particular, I think it's also just too painful for Ma to come to terms and tell the truth. I think the truth is too painful to say when he starts asking questions. Where are we? What is this place?
On that subject, because I'm fascinated by it, I've worked with children before on a number of occasions, and it's two things. Part of it is the old W.C. Fields kind of adage of, you know, never work with children or animals because it can be difficult and impossible. But the other side of it can be really fantastic. And I've found on a couple of occasions that I've walked off set thinking or feeling like I've just learned something really incredible from a child. And I joke, like I literally was just schooled by that kid, like
In Room.
within the scene. Because a child is so close to and still living within that imagination.
Oh,
I
you
guess.
mean a kid that you've acted with? You feel like
like a child that I've
interesting.
acted with, that I felt like I've been schooled and re-educated about a level of commitment to imagination. What was that experience like for you, and what did you find was the most kind of enlightening thing for you, perhaps, or the most challenging thing working with him? He was extraordinary.
He's extraordinary. I joke that I learned way more from him than he did from me. I don't think that he gained anything from working with me at all. I don't think so. But I know that I supported him and I loved him and I made sure that he felt safe and comfortable at all times, and that's an invaluable gift that I was able to give him during shooting of that movie. But he is exactly like what you're saying, so completely committed to imagination and the sense of play. And Room became this awesome place that we got to play in every day. And there's a frequency of adult drama that happens. I think we become kind of like babies as we get older, where it's just like, I'm tired, and why is that person fussing with that? I'm trying to get into my scene and my character, and I feel like no one's paying attention, and is this gonna work? And we're running out of time, and my hair doesn't match from yesterday, and no one's listening. There's just the kind of aches and pains of making a movie that we just all kind of get into because we get so into the detail of making a movie. And Jacob does not see any of it. So the entire thing is just fun and silliness, and none of that stuff, that adult frequency, doesn't matter. It's like time doesn't exist, continuity doesn't exist. It's just pure. It's just coming from this pure place. He doesn't even fully have a conscious reaction of like how the movie is assembled and how it will be received and which film festival will it go to and what does this mean. He doesn't know.
When it came to working with Jacob, Tremblay is his name, right? Did you feel like there was, you know, like a responsibility at all, you know, to go beyond just sort of performing with him? Did you feel like you were in some way, and not to take anything away from the director of the movie, but do you feel like you were sort of also helping to kind of direct that
he was
situation
totally,
and those scenarios with him?
Yes. That was one of the first conversations that we had, as I said, because I had just done a film called Short Term 12, like a year before I met with Lenny. And so I had just worked with kids. I played a woman who runs a foster care facility. And so I'd worked with kids, and I knew what worked and what didn't. And I knew that I was a huge part of helping them to feel safe and suspend the disbelief so that they felt the freedom to perform in what is a really odd situation. You're trying to act like there's not all this stuff around you. And it takes someone who's being present and sort of with you. And it's much easier to get the note when it's the person that you just are right there with. And so part of it was for practical reasons, that Room really was 11 by 15.
Yeah.
And we never took the walls off because we wanted Jacob to feel, and we wanted to really feel that space. I did too. So because of that, we'd have a couple of camera people working the camera and sound. We'd have our director, Lenny Abrahamson, in there. And we couldn't constantly have people coming in and saying, hey, and make sure you fix the hair, and make sure, and you're shadowing him, Brie, about, if someone tried to come in that door, they would knock me over. There wasn't enough space.
Yeah.
So instead, it just became, and if anybody had notes, It would all go to Lenny, and then Lenny would come to me with a couple of sparse things that he felt Jacob needed, and I would be the one to just sit there and sort of give him the notes in the delicate way that we could do a really long sort of continuous multiple takes. And it meant for me that I really had to gain this new sense of control over my emotion and my character, because there'd be times where I could have to, especially scenes where we're fighting, I have to feel myself get to a certain place, and then if he wasn't maybe yelling at me, I'd have to say, okay, try it again, louder, louder, while holding my space.
Yeah.
And then coming back in again. And so I had to sort of negotiate these two worlds, which was sort of amazing to me that I was able to do. It was like Jacob was learning that he had these emotional superpowers, and I was redefining mine for myself in this really cool way.
Yeah.
And then by the time we shot in chronological order, so by the time we even got to the end where we're doing the scene where I'm apologizing to him and we have these Legos, it's so vivid to me because it was such a dance.
Yeah.
Speaking of co-stars,
Yeah.
tell me about it. You have an incredible ensemble.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin. So you just say what are memorable moments and what that was like for you, because you've got so many different characters and different things to play off of.
Yeah, I remember when Scott Cooper Warner Brothers first rolled out the poster for Black Mass, and they rightfully just listed a ton of names on top of each other, because Scott Cooper had assembled a pretty amazing kind of list of actors. Everybody down the list, Jesse Plemons and Rory Cochrane, who were working with Johnny as part of, Jimmy Bolger's gang, and on the FBI side, guys like David Harbour and, just such a solid, rounded out cast. And of course, at the top of the tree is Johnny Depp. And the funniest thing about working with Johnny was, in the film, I'm even slightly embarrassed to even admit this, is in the film my character's supposed to have a little bit of kind of a pedestal relationship with Jimmy Bolger, and that I believe, in my own sense of the events of what happened with the Winter Hill Gang and their relationship with the FBI, that John Connolly, having been sort of looking up to Jimmy Bolger as a child, and a true story of him having been rescued from like a bully situation by Jimmy when he was younger. And just the general milieu that he had and kind of, sheen that he had in the neighbourhood meant that most of the young guys like John, when they were growing up, looked up to Jimmy, basically. And that relationship didn't seem to change when he became an adult male, and even though he thought he was in an equal partnership of bringing Jimmy Bolger into an informant with the FBI, I think there was this kind of mild worship going on. And I don't know how you feel about this, and maybe this is a question I can ask you in a second, but for me, I lived in Dural growing up. I had these mild aspirations I definitely had a fascination with movies, but when that fascination turned into a kind of an ambition, or at least a questioning of could I possibly
Do that.
be a part of that world? Of course, the guys I was looking at were Leonardo DiCaprio and Johnny Depp and other people who are not so much, not necessarily not with us, but those guys have maintained a kind of a movie star
Level.
status from those days when I was in my teens. Having looked at a lot of the stuff that you've been up to, it seems to me that I don't know if this is true or not, if this is just by chance, that you're drawn to work that I would say has a fair amount of nutritional value to it, as in stories that aren't just frivolous stories. They're things that have some kind of commentary to them, or some kind of takeaway for an audience. And Room is definitely that. It's a fascinating subject. And I'm interested to know from you what makes you interested in those projects, because as much as that project is going to probably be seen by a lot of people, there's also a chance those small movies just
Don't
end up going nowhere.
Yeah.
But what's your commitment to those things? And out of that movie in particular, what is it that you discovered or learnt about yourself, or about just sort of, things in general?
It's interesting. I mean, if you're going to do an independent film and there is a higher chance that it's going to go nowhere, the only thing that you're left with is a process. So what that process is, because this is my life, this is my time here on this earth. And I'm just too curious of a person to waste any of it. And I've been acting since I was 7, and it hasn't been easy for me. Maybe in the last year or two, it's gotten easier. But for the most part, I've really had to claw and really work hard and find my spot here. And because there were so many no's and I went through the rough and tumble so many times and kind of felt like I just got to the point where I was on my knees searching for an answer as to what the heck do I do, I had to keep refining for myself why I wanted to make movies. Because if you don't have those difficult moments, I think it works and you're just like, oh, it's just fun to do. But because it wasn't easy for me, I had to go, well, there must be something beyond me that this is, because I'm actually horrified by the sight of my face. I'm not interested in it one bit. I've never seen a photograph of myself that I feel like is a representation of me. I will be taking photos for the rest of my life and I'll never find a photo that's me. My name isn't me. There's very few traits about myself that are me. So if it's not about me, then what is it? And I found that there's this painting that I saw in Paris, and it's this gorgeous painting of this, it's really big, it's about as maybe twice the size of human size. This beautiful woman in a toga, and she's holding up a mirror, and it's reflective and showing outside, and it's called The Truth. And it's moved me so much because I realized that that's what I'm looking for, is the movie theater becomes, I think, an opportunity for initiation. It's very spiritual to me, and it's a chance for us to connect with another human being. Then it doesn't matter if you go to the movie theater with your significant other or 20 of your friends, or if you know every person in the movie theater. That movie starts and you're completely alone, and you're alone connecting with another person, and that person can be another gender, it can be another race, it can be a completely other shape and size, dealing with something that's completely different from your life. And I think that when it's done right, it puts you back in connection with the world again. And so I can't be everywhere at once. I can't stand on a mountaintop and talk about how wonderful and important it is to feel oneness, but I can make a movie that plays in 20 theaters in one day. And that's a message that can sort of echo out beyond me. What did you discover while making this movie?
You know, as much as I was really enthusiastic to make Black Mass, there's always something about each movie that feels like it's a challenge or is terrifying. It was weird because the biggest terrifying thing going into it really was the accent, the Boston accent, because there seems to be so much pressure just generally around that particular accent. I don't know. I tried to take the pressure off by thinking I wasn't trying to find a Boston accent in general, but I was trying to just sound like this guy John, who I had the recordings of, John Connolly. But I think I discovered, and at least reminded myself of how far you can push things. I always sort of try and dance close to, there's certain moments where you go very big on screen. And I'm always terrified of that, of being too subtle or being too big or and I think it just was a really interesting reminder doing that movie to just sort of stay in that experience. There's a lot of watching of monitors, and you're on a movie set, obviously, there's monitors there, and sometimes you can go and watch those things back. I prefer nowadays, and I used to do it a little bit in the past, is go back and watch takes back if there were certain, opportunities to. And now I think I just do it if it's absolutely necessary, because I'm terrified of watching, the vain experience of watching yourself back, and then the next time you're going to shoot the scene or shoot the take, is you're carrying this partial memory.
Oh, you can visually see what your face is doing and how it looks like.
It becomes vanity starts to filter in.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes certain jobs require a certain amount of vanity, depending what kind of movie it is. But I think some movies it's sort of imperative that you throw vanity away. And watching a monitor can really mess things up. But the terrifying thing is
While
then,
making room, looking at the monitor didn't give me any sense of vanity.
Thanks for watching Actors on Actors. Click to the left to watch our conversation with Kate Winslet and Saoirse Ronan. Click to the right to watch our full conversation with Paul Dano and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And don't forget to subscribe to Variety's channel.